It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We got Chad Juttner and Bruno Barbosa, and I'm Kyle Bacher, and we might be joined by Jordan Schaefer later on. I don't know. It's a possibility, but we're going to go ahead. Today we're talking about the outsourcing of human cognition. And by that, I mean, what are we losing? We lost penmanship when we started typing. When we started using GPS, we forgot how to go anywhere. We don't remember phone numbers because we have them in our phone. And now we have this AI super tool. You know, I was just pulling up lists and lists and lists of things. It's way more than I thought when I started researching this topic. Just the fact that we're going to be assisted, you know, it's going to be a tool we're going to use. It's not going to replace us. It'll replace some things, but as we use this tool, it's going to make us, I guess, worse in some ways, better than others. Chad, is it making you a better programmer?
Not yet. I don't know if better is the right word. I go to Stack Overflow slightly less these days, but
more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. I can see the path. I can see a path to being much better. It's not there yet right now. It takes me, mildly less time to do the tasks that a handful of things that AI is good at, right? It hasn't replaced everything else yet. And honestly, it's really just saving me a couple of steps right now. I mean, it's really cool and it's really neat and it's pretty novel to have AI tools built into my development tools. But it saves me, I don't know, a couple of minutes, not hours. You know what I mean? Like, I would still be using Stack Overflow to learn a new library, right? Now I just have to type it into the side instead of a web browser. Like, I have a sidebar in my IDE for AI, the AI system. And it's cool, right? Like, I like it. It's built into my tool set. It's pretty efficient, but not always right. And it's not always, and typing with that doesn't always produce accurate or up-to-date results, right? Like, we know how AI models are trained, and we know the speed at which some libraries and frameworks are built. AI models, even the ones built into our IDEs, the AI models built into our IDEs aren't any better at answering the types of questions that you would just ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tool you're using. So it's getting there. I like it. It's not a replacement for the way I used to do things yet.
It's not going to be ChatGPT. Bruno, what are you finding? Are you using?
So, on at least as far as I know from my client here, I cannot use that yet. I've been doing some personal stuff with it, but again, a little bit more like what Chad is mentioning, more like a support more than actually creating stuff for me. So, I'm curious to see if you have, if there is a different way of doing such and such things, and then I can actually get something created by ChatGPT or some other tool. And I can have a reference. Oh, so this is kind of how you're doing. And then I can actually base my solution on that. That's a little bit more the way I've been using it, other than actually asking it to create something and I just copy paste that, right? I think I use the same criticism in ChatGPT that I would use in Stack Overflow, to try to at least understand a little bit what is written in there, so I can actually try to use it and make it good for me.
Yeah, I use it. You know, right now a lot of it's just kind of kicking the tires and trying different versions of it. But I can see kind of where a lot of it's headed. Yes. You know, it's like, you know, did the Roomba make us all bad at vacuuming?
Right.
Yeah. Translation is real-time translation going to replace learning other languages?
Maybe.
Like if you had a little gadget, Bruno, on your shirt that you wore around for the last 30 years, would you speak English as well as you do now?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not. So, of course, practicing and using something, it makes you better at it all the time. So if you don't have to use something, you're never going to get good at it, right?
Right.
I think it's going to be a little bit more like a hobby to learn something like that, a new language. It's interesting. I used to have the former husband of my mom. They're divorced now, but he's British. And I remember he's saying how he traveled the whole world and he never had to learn another language than English, because every place that he goes, he he just need English to communicate with stuff. And then he moved to the very interior countryside of Brazil, and then he was
It was all
isolated. He couldn't do that anymore, you know. So again, it's just something that we might get used to it, right? But yeah, if you don't need to practice for something, you're probably not gonna learn how to do that. And again, in some circumstances, that's fine. But again, it's just nice to know if you can trust in the technology at some point, then that's fine. But while I think we are still in the phase where we need to double check the information. So I wouldn't trust today as it is today. I wouldn't trust 100% on a translation from English to Portuguese from these tools, the state we are today. But I think we're getting there.
You know, things that are happening, like I use Copilot. Well, I don't use Copilot. I have it turned on. And I'm talking about not the GitHub tie-in or that version. I'm talking about the Microsoft 365 version. And everywhere I look, it says, "Do you want me to summarize this for you?" Mm-hmm. And does that mean am I going to lose reading comprehension? If I say, explain it to me like I'm 5, and I just run in that state, everything comes through this machine that condenses it and explains it to me like I'm 5. Am I ever going to get beyond that level of reading comprehension?
Yeah, I don't know how much challenge we need to actually learn something new. I like to keep a certain level on my stuff. Like I like to be comfortable with what I know and not knowing some pieces of it, and then that's how you learn. But I don't know. I was thinking about this. Like there are lots of stuff in my house or in my life in the daily basis that I don't know how it works. I simply trust that I'm gonna have it, right? So I don't know necessarily how the electricity works in my place. I don't know necessarily how the dishwasher works, but I trust that I'm gonna put something in there, and then I'm gonna take most of the time I'm gonna take things clean out of it, right? I think every technology comes to try to save some time and kind of optimize something. I think AI, it's doing that in another level, in a different kind of layer of what we do on the daily basis, right? You asked me before in the beginning how I'm using this technology. I'm using very little for coding stuff, but I do have friends that are creating music with it. I do have one of my former partners that is creating videos where he actually records himself speaking for a couple minutes, and then he writes a text, and then the tool is going to generate a video with whatever he's trying to say, and like creating a video of him saying that in multiple languages, right? So creating content with all that stuff. That's pretty interesting. That's something that's saving time because he still needs to create the content. He still needs to come up with the ideas of what he wants to present and record. And then the work that's being done is just the kind of the work of recording it itself, right? It's generating the video of him speaking to people. But he still needs to edit the video. He needs to do some other details. But the core of the thing, that it's kind of what takes time to do. That's not the hard part, but it takes time for it to do. This is being done by AI. And this is very interesting and very promising. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think if I was a professional voiceover artist, I would not like that so much. But I'm not. So Sarah did that for a funny video that we made where she had to have somebody responding to her. So she did the whole voice to text and voice changing and stuff like that and worked that in as a conversation. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, we're looking at technology like, you know, a Fitbit, your Apple Watch, like that's not replacing your doctor, but it can tell you need to go to one right away. You know, a lot of these are enhancements. I don't see that. Like, is that going to replace the need to be healthy? Is it going to be WALL-E where we're all in a floating thing and no one moves around? I'm kind of there already, but like,
yeah. Have you been to a Walmart? That's already happening. I don't know. I mean, everything that we've talked about so far is an enhancement. Mm-hmm. Directions, yes, I use my navigation system more than an actual book. Streets and addresses, that's an enhancement, and it hasn't really taken away my ability to get places or, you know, figure it out on my own. But just like language, right? Like I'll use a map to get to a spot that I know, or even a spot that I'm familiar with, right? Like I know how to get to the airport from my house, but I'll open the maps to get the traffic on there and see, like, enhance what I know with like what the machine knows, and maybe take a different route if it looks like there's an accident or whatever. Learning foreign languages. I used to speak French. I'm doing the Duolingo thing to speak it again. If I ever end up in Paris, I think my app will enhance what I already know about a language to a degree. And like Bruno said, right? Like just the repetition in your brain is what you need. Using an app to help me translate or to help me speak would likely just do enhance that experience, right, of the repetition, and probably not looking as much of an idiot as I would if I didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean that tool is gonna like reduce kind of that trepidation and fear you have attempting that, journey to Paris. It's like, well, if I get stuck on a word, I can figure that out quickly. And as you're doing that and having that experience, you're going to be learning the language better. So it's not going to really take anything away. I don't think it's, your cognition is just going to be kind of refocused, and it might be a better learning experience. And maybe that's what we're going to find is some of these deficiencies are actually helping us more in other ways. But like you're saying, just because you have the navigation tools doesn't mean that you can't read a map. I mean, every time you look at Google Map, you're reading a map. It doesn't mean just because you're asking AI for that information instead of going out and looking for it on Stack Overflow or wherever, that doesn't mean you can't do that, and you won't be able to do that again. I never have to search Google now that I have this. And now I don't know how to use a search engine. So maybe the impact is not as much as we think it's going to be.
We used to say, or at least, I don't know, maybe this is just me in my head thinking that this was a thing, but like everybody used to say, oh, if you had an encyclopedia in your pocket, you could sound like a genius. We know now that that is not the case, right? Like we've got as much knowledge as we want at the hand, in our pocket at all times almost. And nobody is any smarter now than they were 20 years ago, before this all really started to become a thing, right? Before we could walk around with all the information at our fingertips that we could today. I would almost argue that it feels maybe like, we're a little dumber, maybe, but definitely not smarter, and definitely not solving problems were unsolved in 2007, right, when the iPhone started.
Yeah, I remember reading an article that says that people feel they're more smart today because they have access to this, right? It doesn't mean that they are. But one thing that you mentioned here, Shad, about using Google Maps and enhancing, right? So every time that you think about using a tool to enhance something, it means that you already have the base knowledge to actually use that. So in order for you to use Google Maps to actually enhance, I know the traffic, I know what's the best route now to get to that, but you still need that knowledge of how to read maps, where is north. And I still lose some exits from time to time because I'm not in the right lane or something like that, right? So it's enhancing, but you actually need to know, you have to have different set of knowledge to actually be able to take advantage of that, right?
You're not wrong. I have a very, very good friend that I go out with on occasion, and they have that exact problem where they leave a certain bar in Northeast Minneapolis, and then I get a text message, oops, I'm in St. Paul instead of a southwest suburb, because of exactly what you're saying. Plug in the address, but you still have to know, to get on 394 West and not 94 East. And we both laugh and laugh and laugh at when that happens, but it does happen, and you're not wrong.
Yeah, a similar story really quick here. My mom visited my brother in Berlin, and my brother, I think he lives in Northwest Berlin or something like that. And Berlin was divided, right? We all know that, but for some reason, there are some streets that exist in the East Berlin that also exist in West Berlin. So depending what you put in your GPS, the same street exists in two opposite sides of. So my mom put the address of the place that my brother told her to go. She just got the trains and went to that place. And it was completely on the other side of the city because she was not aware. She of course can read, she can read a map and all that, but she didn't have the reference of where she needed to be, if it was east or west, because it's just a missing piece of information. So again, if you enhancing, it will do that for the good and the bad, right? You will enhance making it faster, but if you also get something wrong, it will enhance the wrong stuff, and then you can actually end up in a very different way than the place that you wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah. And I think, having that kind of baseline knowledge, I mean, St. Paul, I gave up on a long time ago as far as making sense of how the roads and stuff are laid out. Minneapolis and the western suburbs, it's like if you understand that odd street numbers are going to be on the east and south side versus even it's on the north and west, if you're south of us, you have Avenue North and First Avenue North, First Avenue South. Well, when does one turn into the other? If you have some of that information ahead of time, it helps prevent winding up in East Berlin. But a map is, it's, I guess, only as good as the cartographer and those things of what lane to be in. I use Google once in a while. It's really, really insistent on telling me, like, trying to get me in the right lane. In 12 feet, turn right, 3 degrees. In 5 more feet, it's like, okay, I get it. I see where I'm going. Back to the different, I guess, technologies we're looking at. Those enhancement devices and tools and, AI right now, the large language model, the GPTs and the Claudes and stuff, I use for brainstorming. I ask questions of it. I really am trying to learn about it from itself. And, that's helped. It's like suggestions on, hey, I can do this for you. I can do that for you. I can summarize things. I can, clarify things. I can, help you make decisions. Well, now I can't make decisions because you're helping me make decisions. So I've lost that ability. Or maybe I don't have decision fatigue, because I have that help. So it's helping me in that way. Maybe I'm making less decisions, but I'm making them more effectively just because I need the right information. Knowing that it's right or not right now is the challenge, because it's just output. It's all math at the end. And it's as good as this training. And like Chad said, it's always behind. So it's never going to be the most recent current information. Is that even possible for it to?
I think it will be at some point possible for it to have, more recent context. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to be real time, but maybe I don't know. Maybe in 10 years it'll be real time. But like right now, the types of things I see a lot of folks use LLMs for isn't necessarily like a search engine like Google. I know Google's like one of their biggest fears is that GPT models become Google search. I don't think that's a thing that's really ever going to happen. But I don't think it's crazy to think that at some point it'll be easier and easier and easier to update some of these models, daily with a feed of input. Yeah, but I don't know. I struggle with that being the true use case for them, right? Like all of the problems that you presented to an LLM just now weren't necessarily issues that a real-time knowledge base would have solved, right? Like brainstorming and even some of, like I grumbled earlier about the fact that my LLM, whatever LLM I'm using, might not have context to help me with a framework that came out just last week. But it does have quite a bit to help me refactor Java code in a way that makes sense and to follow patterns and best practices and all that stuff. That stuff doesn't need it doesn't need to know about what happened in the world in the last 72 hours to be able to help me solve that problem. Yeah, I think for the use cases being presented to LLMs today, they're doing better than fine, right? They're amazing. And now everybody's asking, like, hey, can it replace Google? Kind of. Yeah, I mean, earlier I said it can replace Stack Overflow for me in a bunch of situations. Yeah. So what was the question?
What flavor of Buddies is that? Strawberry?
Strawberry. This is the best Buddies. Unfortunately, caffeine free, but absolutely delicious.
Like the grape. So, Bruno, you had touched on, like, I guess what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You have a little bit of information and you're empowered by that, and you feel like you got this thing pegged, about it. You have your sense of expertise is far greater than your actual expertise. I feel like, this is kind of going to feed that, maybe make it easier for imposters, I guess. There's people with imposter syndrome, but actual people that might get a job working from home full time and rely on a tool like that to get their job done. And then because they don't have those skills, that base of knowledge that you need to use that as a tool, as an enhancement, they're actually trying to make it their everything. Do you think that's going to be a problem? Are we going to see like people that somehow sneak in the door?
I think yeah, in both ways. So we saw this, at least I saw this during the pandemic, where people were actually finding 6-7 different jobs at the same time, and they would kind of do that until they could actually get paid for 2-3 months, and then people would fire them. I think sooner or later, the imposter, you expose them, right? This will happen, and there are people that to do anything, but I think this will happen. But I don't think this is going to be a long-lasting problem for too long, because again, we always create tools to adjust ourselves if so we can detect if something is good or bad, right? We can measure
right.
that. And on the other hand of all this, like empowering people with knowledge like that also makes people lose their fear of learning something new, because with a little piece of information you can actually jump into something that might be a little bit more complex, and then if you really want to get good at it, you're gonna get deep into it. One example, getting back to the language stuff that we were mentioning before, right? My wife and I, we used to have these kind of group of people that we would put together in a restaurant just to speak English, to practice English, right? The whole idea of that was to make people lose a fear of speaking a different language. Because again, when you're learning something, a new language, when you're learning anything, in the beginning, you feel very stupid about it because, I know that I don't know anything. And then if you try to do something with that, it's not good enough. So we put this group together so people actually lose the fear of speaking English. And once you lose that fear, it's a whole new level for you to start speaking and evolve and get better at it, right? So I think having this confidence and creating tools to improve people's confidence on using something new or making them able to kind of try to create something that's better or kind of a little bit more to what they actually know, I think it creates this kind of, spiral of growth, if the person wants to keep evolving, of course. But it kind of it breaks this first barrier of, I don't know anything and I'm really lazy to start learning it. But it's so easy to start doing something with it. Then actually you just break that first barrier of, I feel stupid. I actually created something with this. So let me get a little bit more information, and then you can go from there. I think this is a good side for what we are saying.
Yeah, there's those moments where you need to have some kind of breakthrough to move forward. You need to make progress and recognize progress to build the confidence to keep going.
We need the frustrations too.
Yes.
But
yeah, the learning curve. What I've noticed when I've had done trainings and tutoring and all that for people using computers and different applications, there's a fear that some people have that prevents them from learning anything. And that's, I don't want to break it. I'm afraid that I'm going to do something and it's going to screw something up. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, go ahead. We can fix it. If you're going to worry about breaking your computer, break your computer. I can restore it. There's things we can do. It's not the end of the world, and so it's trying to help people. And this fear you have of technology, don't equate that with being stupid. You're not stupid. Like, this is a whole thing that has to be learned. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff that people don't know. It doesn't mean they're not stupid. It just means they haven't learned how to do it. I cannot play the trombone. It doesn't mean I'm an idiot. There's plenty of other reasons I'm an idiot, but it's not that one. There's a lot of cognitive stuff that we can enhance with these tools we have right now. And then, of course, there's technological advancements in other areas, like Roombas, making us bad at vacuuming and things like that. And like a person has to go through this kind of learning curve and understanding and whatever journey you want to call it. Companies have to go through this as well. How does that translate then? What's as a company, there's additional fears like, where's this information going? What are they doing with it? As you're creating proprietary stuff and you have an AI tool that's monitoring it, providing suggestions, things like that. Where's that information going? Like, there's extra considerations like that. I feel like at the beginning of 2023, there was everybody froze because this great thing was happening and they didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at and how are we going to move forward from that? I read that agents, Zuckerberg yesterday was talking about agents and how there's going to be more agents than people. Every company is going to have an AI agent to do certain things. So that sparked, an idea like, oh, that's something that companies could look at. Like, how could we utilize that? Is that something we can do now with our type of business? It kind of goes, beyond chatbots.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff in the works that will watch you. I think Microsoft is coming up with a chip that takes constant screenshots. I read that one time. I don't know anything more about it. It's like it's seeing what you're doing, how you're working, so that it can help you improve. So there's a lot. This thing is getting its tendrils into everything. Are we getting closer to knowing what to do with it?
There was a lot of questions in there, Kyle.
I'm sorry.
Getting close. I think now that it's been in people's hands, and I think it's the evolution of any new technology for guys like me and Bruno. Step one is everybody's excited about it, but nobody knows how to use it. And then people start building it into the tools. And now there's a whole developer ecosystem around this stuff, right? So not to say that things like Hugging Face and all of that didn't exist before OpenAI became kind of exploded the popularity of AI as a tool in your tool belt. But I'll use the AWS example specifically, right? Bedrock certainly didn't exist before OpenAI became insanely popular, and that's a massive tool in a lot of folks' tool chain, right? To have pre-built services around a concept built into an ecosystem that a lot of us are kind of using anyway. And I haven't looked into the Azure side of this. I know it exists over there too. Similar things to Bedrock exist on the Azure side. So if your domain is, cloud, then we're at the point now where a lot of the developers have access to easy to use services that will enable us and accelerate our ability to build solutions on top of this. Now that exists, I would expect a lot of really cool things to come of it. I know I'm working on a couple of things. Maybe Bruno is. I know a couple of folks at SDG are working on little side projects that use these things. And we're doing it now and not last year because now I don't have to, figure out where do I host my model? How do I host my model? What does hosting a model even look like? All of those little problems have been obfuscated away from me now. So I think we're going to see a lot of cool novelty applications coming in the next 6 months that aren't just going to be chatbots built into Slack or some other silly, I rail on chatbots because it's where everybody goes at first. Seemed like the case for a long time where everybody's using a model behind a chatbot. I don't know. What do you think, Bruno?
Yeah, so I was reading some stuff about how companies are using this and how today we still have just like what you're saying, Chad, lots of the AI stuff that we are using today are still the IT people using it most of the time. And it's still a transition because, again, we're still learning how to use these things. So I was reading how AI it's still transitioning to the business to use it. So we don't have still the business of the companies using that thing. They just think that the IT sector of the companies are responsible for the AI, and then they can be more efficient. But the idea of AI as a whole is just to be more efficient for the whole company. And I think the business side of the companies, they didn't realize that yet. It's just not something that you can use to make the IT more efficient. It's something that can actually enhance the whole business if you know how to use it. But the business hasn't learned how to use that yet. I read some statistics, but this is from Brazil in a group that I share information with. They made a research in this kind of group of 500 people, business owners, where only 7% of the business owners actually tested some kind of AI in their businesses, right? So it's still kind of growing. There's still a transition phase right now. It's just that we still have lots of tooling for the IT to use, but we are still moving forward, just like Chad is saying, creating new toolings for other parts and aspects of our lives to kind of use that. I recently learned too that the Brazilian, because of course it's always how you check your taxes is going to be the first part of the government that you want to increase and enhance and make it better. So in Brazil, they're actually trying to do something like that with the taxes, to use more AI in that, so you can actually get more money out of the taxes and stuff like that. So there is a transition happening right now.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the use cases for the regular information worker. You know, the non-IT. I use email. I create documents and all that basic stuff. Like, how will that enhance, you know, my job? And there's a lot of ways. You know, it's really helpful. One way is writing more concise emails, you know, shortening things. When you first write out something, it tends to be much longer than it has to be. And then you can just grab that, dump it in. Hey, make this shorter, check my grammar. Like, all of a sudden we all sound like these, like, that we're, you know, Jason Shorschlick level writers. And wow, we're all really articulate now and efficient with our language and really good communicators. And I don't think that's a bad thing if it gets us to that point. You know, summarizing complex things. I've taken entire pages of pricing model information. It's like, okay, you know, this is like cloud pricing is complicated, to say the least. You know, you're paying for the storage and the compute power and the throughput and all of that stuff. You know, there's a big page of that around Bedrock, because it's, you know, when I first looked at it, it was just running a stripped down version of Stable Diffusion and generating images. It's like, well, if we want to let everybody play around with this and they go out and start generating images, how much is it going to cost? You know, like, do we want to unleash this? Do I want to give Chad access to a sandbox to play around with AI? Is he going to, all of a sudden, we're going to get a $20,000 bill? Maybe be worth it. I don't know. But Chad like, you brought up the cost of the Bedrock stuff, and it made me feel a lot better that you're paying attention. I don't know what that was that you had turned on that was, you know, a little more spendy than some of the other stuff. But I took that page of pricing information. I'm like, what does it say? You know, tell me, make sense of this for me. And after it did that, I was not so by Bedrock at that point. It's like, well, if 100 people do 100 of these, it's only going to be $90. You know, that's not going to kill us. So that decision making, like having better information, there was a dangerous element there of, what if it was wrong and it wasn't $90, it was $9,000. In terms of replacing our abilities, it's enhancing them. I don't think it's going to replace them, but I don't think I would have gotten to a point where that was any less confusing for me, you know? So it didn't really take anything away. I already needed that help.
And I like to think like that too, as we are the old ones in this generation, right? We're in the end of this generation right now, and we are learning these new toolings. But I think about my daughter, what the world's going to be when she's learning how to interact and when she gets to the work market, right? What skills she would have to actually find a job or anything like that. It's like, if she wants to be an IT person, will she need to know calculus 1, 2, and 3 like I had to do? Because I never used that, but apparently I needed those skills to actually learn something, kind of base knowledge that we mentioned before, so I could actually have a way of thinking, so I can actually do programming a little bit better, right? But we are trying to adapt today to the new technology, right? It's a natural transition, but we want to do that because we don't want to stay behind. But what's the new generation coming with? They're kind of already inserted in this world where everything is already like that. How that's affect it? This is something that I'm curious to see as well.
Yeah, what happens when they lose their phone?
Right.
Does the world stop until they get a a replacement.
Thanks to the wonders of two-factor authentication, I think for a lot of people it does. Without my phone, I can't log into a VPN anymore. So had that happen where I've been so tired, I dropped my phone. I dropped my phone because I'm clumsy. But you lose 2FA and all of a sudden you can't get into a VPN or you can't authenticate to something that for whatever reason needs your one-time password every single login attempt. Using a phone, it might make things more secure, maybe, but it certainly hasn't made authentication more convenient for anybody. I think the opposite there is true.
No, I often have to reset the MFA for people so they can reset it up because they just simply changed phones. And it's like they didn't migrate their stuff. They didn't back it up. And those keys they had for that specific device, they just didn't do it. But it'd be the same. Like I think of, I backed up my phone yesterday and I'm looking at, because if I can't get into stuff, then I can't help other people get in. It has a bigger effect. If I lose, I'm the admin for a lot of things. If I can't, my world stops. So it's like, okay, looking at how do I back this stuff up? What's my plan for when that phone breaks or if it breaks? And I have one. I have my entry. I have a key fob and a key card. I know I'm going to have my car keys with me at least, and this lives around my neck. I have those contingencies set up. I have a plan for if I win the lottery and disappear and end up on a cabin on a lake somewhere. And you guys are like, "Where's Kyle? He's gone." I have a plan for that. But still, it doesn't mean it's not going to be a huge hassle. So maybe there's additional problems we're adding and we need to figure out how to deal with that, losing your two-factor. Do you carry a key, one of these key fobs with you and then use it for all your accounts as a backup? Yeah, I think that brings up a good point. So I was looking at a long list of the things that AI will replace or will maybe diminish because it's going to take over that part of our thinking. And it actually gave me a lot of reasons to use AI. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. The managed notification system. You just tell it what you want. I don't know how you plug that in, but it's like that kind of stuff. I miss things all the time. I'm late for meetings. I get caught up in things. And to have something on my wrist or something that would just poke me and go, hey, and because I also hate notifications. So then I silence them and it's like, okay, if I had something that just knew me well enough to go, oh, this is during the day and it's a meeting and he's late for it. I'm going to ping him, and you can set up hours and all that kind of stuff. There's things you can do, but, across all your platforms, because now we have, Slack and we have calendaring and all that stuff going on.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're talking about something more like to filter out all the information that we are bombarded with all the time, but just trying to make it more efficient by having what is important and what you consider to be important to know at that certain period of time, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting too.
I think, and that's to me right now, AI doesn't really remember the last conversation you had. It doesn't know you. It only knows you as much as your current conversation. Now, GPT has the ability for you to tell ChatGPT about yourself and things like that, but it's relying on you to tell it that stuff. And, things like don't ever use emojis because I know you don't have emotions and you're just lying when you use them. I have that in there. And so I don't get emojis. But being able to learn about you through interactions with you and being able to save that to where then it can start helping you.
Yeah, but this also gets to that privacy thing that it's a little kind of a concern for, at least for me. It is, right? If I'm telling, I don't like to expose myself too much on social media or anything like that, but would I, of course, if you have some benefits out of it, maybe, but how much you trust in the technology to kind of expose you that much so something can actually help you? I don't know. Maybe this is a problem with me or our generation. I don't know.
For many people, they will sacrifice their privacy in a heartbeat if it makes their lives easier, better, more fun in other ways. We've given so much data away about ourselves already. The whole life cycle of social media and things like that, and signing up for things. And it's like you give a piece away here and over there and over there, and all of a sudden they have a giant data set and they have all the information. We've done that just so we can interact with people on Facebook. You know, the cost of all of that. You know, like the idea that will AI music replace music made by humans? And in a lot of ways, if it's better, it will. The AI images, I'm less impressed with an AI image than I am with a drawing that somebody made. I look at something that was obviously Dolly 3 or something like that, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, that's neat. How'd you get it to do that? Like, I have that feeling, but I don't look at it like it's art. It's interesting to see because the stuff is moving so fast, and it seems the faster it moves, the faster it can move. And, you know, Chad, you're looking at, you mentioned 6 months, seeing what happens in the next 6 months. That's a pretty short window.
Well, I think it's with the tool sets that we have now, it doesn't take us as long to develop entire solutions around this stuff. And I think literally right now would be the best time to start an AI project, whatever. It's like a lot of things, right? Like, remember internet being young.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until tool sets and libraries caught up to just that base set of functionality that you could utilize to build web pages, to build, whatever, to build interactivity into things. And then those first companies were always the most successful. It's there's not another Amazon, really. I mean, kind of, but there's and I think the same might be true of some AI things, right? I think OpenAI was quick out of the gate. Going to be hard to completely match the success of that. Kind of cute that there's so many people trying.
Well, I really like Claude.
Yeah, I think the models are great. I mean, the Gemini stuff from Google, I started to dig into that a tiny bit more, right? So realizing I kind of have a bias for the AWS ecosystem, and to a lesser extent, the OpenAI. I started poking around with what's possible in Gemini and the Google chain of tools. So the massive big companies are going to be building really cool things. OpenAI exists. I think if you want to build a product based on AI, whatever your idea is, like, start soon. And I think we're going to start seeing some really cool, weird things sooner rather than later.
I'm on board for that. I'm on board for weirdness. That's my final thought. Bruno?
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we shut her down?
I think embrace yourself, but I think we are all enhancing. We are all getting better. Technologies come to help, but let's not forget that we need to know the basics to use it and make a good use of it.
Yeah, we're building the foundation right now, and moving forward will mean overcoming some fears. And but I'm in. So I think with that we can shut her down and say goodbye, everybody.
All right, see you guys.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design.